All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to our first post IETF 121 Mimi interim. Oh, good. There's Rowan. So Alyssa's not with us today, so it's just me chairing. So as usual, I would ask everyone to note well, in particular IETF's Code of Conduct and intellectual property policies. So the only thing we have on the agenda today is that Rowan requested some time to review open issues, open items basically on the repositories for the adopted documents for the working group. So that's the protocol document and the content format document. We also have the adopted room policy document. However, there are no open items on that repository to review. Right, if anybody has anything else they'd like to discuss, and in particular, Rowan, so I was thinking of going through in the order listed on the slide here. There's one open pull request on protocol, then protocol issues, then content format issues. Does that seem okay to you?
I'd probably do, I'd probably skip the pull requests and just go straight for the issues.
All right, there's only the one PR, and it does seem like
it's related to the download.
It is, yeah. Okay, so you're saying we'll discuss that in the context of the issue anyway?
Well, I think that the only people who would object to that are not here. So
okay. All right. Okay, so then in that case, we'll focus on the issues. But before moving on, is there anything anybody else would like to add to the agenda?
Conrad?
Okay.
No, nothing to add from our side at this point.
Okay.
Sorry to say.
All right. So, all right, good. That we can move on. Now, Rowan, if you'd like, I know you're going to be leading this discussion. Would you like to share your screen? If not, I can do it. I have the...
How about you share your screen, and then I can kind of whiz around to other places to check things while you're on there, and then I can...
Yep, okay. Just bear with me while I dig around for the correct window. Okay, there we go.
Okay. So maybe if we start the oldest first. So I think... So we now have the room metadata in draft Mimi room policy. And so my feeling with this is that there's nothing for us to do, but that, we should give the people who commented on this a chance to look at room policy, and I could make an explicit sort of send a message to the list and say, hey, like, I think that the things that you want to do in this issue would be covered by using this mechanism over here, and see where that goes. And if that resolves, then we close this issue.
Does that comment that I just typed in look correct to you?
Yeah, sure. Close enough.
All right. One down. Support external media requests.
I think this. So this is related to that PR. So I think what we mostly need So the new issue that I'm creating right now is that we don't have unless I already created it, is that we don't really have a consistent threat model at this point. So before,
okay, so you're saying we can't really make progress on this issue until we've articulated a threat model, which will let us figure out like how to solve this properly.
Yeah.
So it sounds like resolving this issue is blocked on the one that it sounds like you're currently typing up about writing a threat model.
Number 93. All right. Okay.
There we go.
Awesome.
And so this seems like a perfectly good place to stick an issue for now, but do you envision this being something that goes into the protocol document or perhaps a new draft?
I mean, we could develop it standalone, but eventually, like most of the security considerations are going to either belong in, I think, in architecture or in protocol.
Yes, actually, I was going to say architecture seems like a natural place for this.
So we've got some security conscious folks here in the room. Anybody want to express an opinion there? Go for it, Raphael.
Trying to unmute myself. Yeah, I think we can essentially copy what we did in MLS, where we do have security consideration in the protocol document, but then we have a broader context in the architecture document, where we can discuss stuff that is not immediately relevant to the protocol itself, but very much to the applications that wish to use the protocol.
Okay. Anybody else? Cool. Okay.
I'm putting notes in the issues sort of in lieu of taking notes on this interim. So bear with me. And now we've discussed this new issue. Okay, so, right, we discussed the need for a threat model. External media request is blocked on, a threat model. So I think there's nothing else to to say about that.
Yeah.
2 down. All right, binary encoding for MIME transport.
Yeah. So maybe this is one where, I mean, this has been in the document for a while now as TLS. And it's currently listed as notional in the document, but in the absence of somebody saying we should change this to something else concrete, I think we should just do a quick consensus call and say, hey, can we make this? And I think the use of HTTP, can we close these 2 issues and make them no longer notional, but just like this is what the protocol does?
Oh yeah, I see you actually tagged me on this back in July. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think going to the list is appropriate here, just so that it gets a few more eyes than are present today. I think I've argued before that like it'd be nice to have consistency in format across the different documents, but I'm happy to defer to the consensus of the working group on that, especially since I'm not actually writing any of these documents. Okay, so then the action here, as you just said, is to go to the list and formally establish consensus on the wire encoding and on HTTP as a transport, right?
Yeah. And same thing, 26. We have currently we have a notional, we're using TLS over, HTTPS, and we're using a directory, and we have endpoints defined. So we could use some other protocol, but in the absence of somebody providing a concrete alternative, I think we should just do the consensus call and say, this is what we're doing.
Just for my understanding, what are we doing? We keep using TLS?
We keep using HTTPS unless somebody wants, has a concrete proposal of something else to do. I mean, the only other concrete alternative anyone has suggested has been XMPP.
Actually, I think beyond TLS, I think it settled on MTLS, right?
Well, yeah. So it's in terms of the transport, using HTTPS with mutual authentication, whereas like using MTLS, we would need to go and define. It would be write a new transport protocol, shim in the document.
But
Yeah.
the part that I don't understand is that this is about the binary encoding. And so HTTP is not a binary encoding, and neither is TLS.
No. This is the transport semantics. That was the previous.
Sorry,
The
you're
previous
already
one
on
was
to the next
TLS
one.
presentation language.
Okay. Sorry about that.
As opposed to say, like message pack or CBOR.
So for the previous one, we stick with the TLS codec. That's the consensus.
That's the proposal to the list.
Sorry, yeah.
That we go forward with that.
Okay. Sorry about the confusion.
No, it's my fault for jumping between tabs. Okay, but in any case, so for both the questions of binary encoding for transport and transport semantics, the next step here is for Rowan to go to the list and see if anybody disagrees with using TLS presentation language and then HTTPS. So that's good. All right, shape of policy.
So since we now have a separate, room policy document that was adopted, I'm going to propose that we close this and move any of these discussions over to that document, which currently has no issues, no pull requests. So
yeah, I agree. It doesn't sound like there's any action to be taken on the protocol document here. And the other thing is that it's easy to unclose GitHub issues if someone does find a reason that oh no, there's more to do here. Yeah. So I'm inclined to lean towards closing stuff. Okay. So does anybody object or want to keep this issue open? Okay, I'm going to close it then. All right, continue fetching key packages directly.
Okay, we actually no longer do this. So I think this one is now, we consider this resolved because now we go resolve key packages through the hub. So that the welcomes can get delivered.
Okay, in that case, I'm going to close, and as before, we can reopen if there's still something more to discuss or investigate here.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Knox.
Do we need them?
I think the only person who I think has experienced I don't know 3 of the people here, but I think Timo has some experience on the application side. Timo, do you have anything you want to add there?
In the meantime, I have a quick question. At some point we conducted a survey of what messenger uses what feature. I think Matrix did that. Maybe we can take some sort of a data-driven decision here. In the sense that if a lot of messengers have it, then we should support it as well. If it's exactly one, then we should try and understand if that's really important.
So I think that there are actually two things. So the first is whether in a federated environment we want to support this, whether we think that there is a good use for this. And then the second is whether we can use, like sort of related rooms or, whatever, in order to sort of simulate the user experience or to duplicate the user experience of Knox without actually creating a separate protocol message. I'm like sort of hesitant to like go and start a new thread on the mailing list about this while we still have sort of other, like to avoid indigestion. But I mean, that would probably be the right thing to do, would be to start another thread on this. And whether it needs to be its own, what the user experience should be. So anybody who's used Knox before on some of these other platforms that support them, like what the characteristics are that we want, and what those are going to look like when you're using end-to-end encryption, right? Which is a little different than most of the systems that support Knox don't have any support for end-to-end encryption. So.
Right. I mean, the one place that I know Knox from would be real-time communication, where you start you share a link to a video conference, and then people join, but they knock first if it's a completely open room, stuff like that. But that's not exactly Mimi territory. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right. Well,
my inclination would be to drop support for this if nobody can articulate a clear case for why Mimi needs it. But
how about I just start a new thread, and just say, hey, unless somebody has a use case for this, we're going to drop it.
XMPP compatibility.
Okay, so I think that there is an aspect of 26 that is related to this, which is that we could use the XMPP core instead of HTTP as a transport mechanism. But then mainly this is about whether you can make XMPP interoperate with other Mimi implementations. And we know that Marvin is currently, he's implementing at least the MLS and Mimi content. He's not implementing Mimi protocol, to my knowledge, but he is implementing MLS and Mimi content. And so it sounds like it should be possible to have his implementation be able to send a message to a compliant Mimi protocol implementation. I would be, I would say, let's close this. And if Marvin is the person who knows XMPP, who's working on this implementation. And he says, as I understood, there was no interest within the Mimi working group to use a protocol based on or compatible with current XMPP specification. And this is a fair decision. If there was a clear signal that XMPP is desired to be used, I'm certain that several community members would be willing to prioritize development around that. But as many contributors to XMPP don't have a lot of resources they are willing to waste, you are unlikely to see large documents being prepared to promote the use of XMPP and Mimi. So it's kind of like, if there is somebody who's like, yeah, we think that this has got some nice properties, we'd like to go and use it as a base protocol, then that would be the answer. That would be related to issue 26, I think it was. But that in terms of just the other ability to have a protocol level, to have somebody be able to send a message from one system to the other, I also feel like there's nothing missing that has been identified so far, and that could be identified as a specific narrow issue if necessary. Or
okay,
I would say, instead of transports like XMPP, I would say to support XMPP core as a transport for Mimi instead of HTTPS.
That's instead of, as opposed to, as well as,
or in addition to. But yeah, like obviously Mimi protocol is about like a concrete thing. So yeah, right. I think that what you wrote is fine there.
And then otherwise, I think you were arguing for closing this, and then considering reopening should there be a critical mass of people coming along with use cases for supporting XMPP. And closing this to mean Mimi will not support XMPP.
It will. Closing this, I think, closing this means that we don't believe that there's anything missing in order to have high-level compatibility between XMPP, and that the transport issue is covered in number 26.
Got it. There. Okay. Figure out versioning.
Oh, yes. I can take a stab at a proposal for some more versioning, but I think we do still need to do this.
Go ahead, Raphael.
So yeah, I guess it would be nice if you did an initial draft, Ron. So from our side, I can say that this is a problem we are starting to work on at Phoenix currently, because Travis is right to point out all the different parts, that might need versioning. It's not just one version number that governs everything. So we don't have an answer to this yet, but going forward, we'd love to contribute our experience.
Sounds good.
And we think that this is a very central aspect or property of the whole construction here, because we might get things wrong initially, but then, having the possibility to easily upgrade is going to make all the difference. And also counter this, sempiternal criticism that federated systems cannot be updated and are frozen in time forever, etc.
Yeah.
So to be clear, the objective here is to allow MIMI implementation to speak multiple versions of the protocol simultaneously, and then like dynamically negotiate with the peer which version it's going to use.
I wouldn't go as far as saying, negotiation. You might very well be forced to, use the latest version, but at the very least, you have a clear indication that you should do that.
Okay, so then a minimum solution here would be, say, that if one server speaks version N and the other speaks version, if one server speaks version N, the other speaks version N+1, the one running N+1 can say, no, I refuse to interop until you upgrade.
Yeah, that could be a solution.
Okay.
I think this also needs to cover the clients, because clients can upgrade much more slowly. So.
Well, that could only, if we're talking about the clients, that would only be the content format version, right?
And the MLS profile, right?
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, I mean, in Mini, the clients are very involved, right? Because it's end-to-end encrypted, and so it's not enough if only the servers agree.
ASCII art flow changes. I suspect maybe the comment from our last working group review of this still applies. Like these are diagrams and artwork we would want to clean up before we go to last call or farther down the line when the documents are more mature.
Well, yeah, this last comment still applies. I think last call is a good time, but right before our last call is a good time to do this. So.
Okay, in that case, I will leave this issue alone and avoid adding more noise to it. Add description of flows with pseudonyms, opt-in privacy enhancement.
I'm happy to say that I get to close one of these myself here that I noticed. Okay. I mean, we had the MIMI documents, which were being worked on and presented at the last IETF. Maybe we can put some links in here to that work. I'm
working on a PR. I haven't gone super far since the last IETF, but there's stuff in the works.
Okay. So watch this.
So then the action for this issue then is to take changes to the protocol document that like materialize the pseudonym stuff, the MIMI pseudonym stuff that we've been discussing.
Yeah, I think the idea is to merge the MIMI doc into the main protocol document.
Okay, it looks like Rowan beat us to the punch on this one. Resolved by PR90. Good enough. And
91 was the last
Move.
one.
Yep, for this repo. Move franking assertion map to Mimi content.
So basically we have this this section that says in franking, you need to go put something in the content. And it provides a concrete way to do that using the Mimi content format. But then that creates a dependency. It makes the protocol document depend on the content format. So we can have it one of two ways. We can have the content format, which has a section which says, if you're doing franking according to the Mimi protocol, here's the way you do this, which I think unlinks us. But it does mean that in terms of an RFC dependency, that the content document has to wait for the protocol document. And the content document, it was designed to be a generic content container, and so other people may be using it for other purposes that don't involve Mimi. So whether that's, I think that's probably an acceptable thing to say that there's a stable reference, but that it's not an RFC because it's in the RFC editor queue. In docref, that may be okay. But that would be my sort of preferred approach for this. Anybody have any opinion on this besides me?
I think I should, but I don't. I'm happy to defer to your take on this, Rowan. Could I ask you to put a comment in this issue, like laying out your rationale in terms of the relationship between documents? Because that might help us down the line, as we send these documents to working group last call or other review steps.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do this right after the meeting.
Yep.
This is. I'm gonna send a message. I'm gonna send a comment now, marking myself so that I will go and do it later. I'll edit that and replace it with an actual comment after the meeting.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you, Ron.
Okay.
So that's the last item on the Mimi content document. So next we'll be going through, wait, what did I just say? Sorry, that's the last issue on Mimi protocol. Next we'll be going through the Mimi content issues. Before we do that, I just want to give the room last chance. Anything else to discuss on Mimi protocol? Nope. All right. Okay. So we discussed this PR, its relationship to issues 25 and 26 already, so we don't need to re-review this. So now let's see, 16 open issues on Mimi content, and I think we should have plenty of time to get through these.
Do you mind if I create a ready for PR tag?
A label? No, not at all.
Label, okay.
Let me know if you run into like a permissions problem or something.
Sorry, I'm just looking for a nice color. Okay, yeah. All right, yeah.
All right,
so
for CBOR encoding, decide if we want to tag URIs.
So I think we had a conclusion already on this, sorry. So the information that I got back from the CBOR folks was that there's already some documents that say basically, if you already know that this is always going to be, something's always going to be a URI or something like that, then don't tag it. So that's what I put there. And oh, you can't have multiple labels?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. It just said I removed the label by accident.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
I must have just been, I think we were probably just racing to apply labels or something. Yeah.
Okay, there, both are back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So it sounds like we got a clear answer from CBOR. So is there like an action? Do we have to now remove a tag from the document, basically?
Yeah, I need to remove a tag from the document. So I kind of want to batch all these changes up, so that I can do a single PR with a bunch of commits that all do these things. So
okay. In that case, no need to clutter up the issue with more commentary. Do timestamps need time tags?
So this is really this is more of a requirements issue, a requirements question than anything else, which is, do we want to support explicitly sub-millisecond timing? And if we think we do, then maybe we want to use, you know, I mean, right now this is more of an issue that this time at the moment is expressed in MIME protocol, and it's currently fixed as a number of milliseconds. And if that stays that way, and if we don't want to be able to extend that and make that something else, then we have no need for a time tag, and we can just put a uint 64 number of milliseconds since the start of the epoch, and we're done. If we think that we want finer granularity received times, then we can express that later by having this tag and adding additional, you know, basically having the number of seconds and the number of milliseconds, the number of fractions of that second in some, you know, with the particular unit associated with it. That's how the CBOR time tags work. So you could have, you know, yeah, this is, you know, 824, this number of seconds and 824 extra milliseconds. Or then later you could say it's this larger number of nanoseconds or whatever, right?
So I suppose we should go to the list to establish a consensus on this? And then
you're right. That's probably a good idea.
So let's see. I realize now I should have been using, we don't have, sorry. On the other repo, we have that needs consensus label, which I guess we could use to indicate, hey, we need to go to the list.
I just have a quick question, Ron, on that. Did you identify any case where the timestamp could be used to disambiguate ordering of messages? Because that's like, you know, messaging systems are not that fast. You don't need sub-millisecond timestamps to, you know, because stuff is fast, but it might be that you want to order messages according to timestamps. And
yeah, so this is related to an issue that Marvin created. Sender, 28 sender timestamp. Well, both that and 27. So 27 and 28 are all related to times and timestamps. So basically, in order to make franking work, we had to make delivery of the timestamp mandatory, because otherwise you can't validate that that's like a super important part of the franking context. And if you don't have that, then certain things, then certain attacks are possible. And then if you do have that, that means that needs to get delivered from the follower server to the client. And we also have a way to make sure that that's not tampered with on the way, you know, that the follower doesn't, if the follower tampers with it, then the message isn't going to be accepted by the client. So we have a safe way to get, we have a safe, we have a way to make sure that if that gets delivered to the client, that it's delivered safely. And we also now have this sort of this requirement that that it does need to get delivered to the client. So if we've got that, then that means that the hub timestamp can be used as an order. And of course, you can have multiple messages that are received at exactly the same number of milliseconds. If we think that we need to, in the same room, that we need to be able to say, oh yeah, like this was actually, we're going to have a resolution of microseconds because there may have been, 16 messages in a busy group that were all received at the same time. They were probably all just likes, but do we care?
Yeah, I mean, that is essentially a dangerous assumption, right? I mean, you're right that they're probably just likes, but what if they're not? And
Well, is it dangerous? Like, if something really is delivered, if the order isn't 100% consistent for messages that arrived within the same millisecond?
I mean, we can put up the classical, example of, do you want to eat ice cream or do you want to kill the president? And, depending on, where the yes is to that question, to these two questions, you have some confusion. Of course, it's completely made up, but it's just, to illustrate the point.
Right. But like if the arrival time of both of them shows the same amount of time, even if you hit yes and hit return as the other message was coming in and the other message was later, you'd have the same effect, right? So even if the ordering is absolutely correct, the example that you gave is still possible.
That is true, of course, but at least it's not the protocol's fault in that instance, because what MLS gives us as a guarantee is that between epochs we actually have consistency on what members see, but within an epoch we don't necessarily have that unless we start sorting by timestamp. So it would be nice if the protocol was actually capable of doing that. Again, this is not a super strong argument, but it might be one of the situations where that makes a difference.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's less likely if we did it with microseconds or nanoseconds, like I think picoseconds, like whatever scale, like you could construct a case in, a very rare case where you have a collision with exactly the same timestamp.
Sure.
Because of high availability, right? So you can have two DSs that receive a message at the same time, and they apply the same timestamp.
True. It's a question of probability, right? There's a certain probability that things happen within the same millisecond, but there's a much smaller probability that it happens within the same microsecond.
Yeah, so, minus 10 to the 10 to the minus third.
Yeah.
Less probable, right?
Right. Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to mention that, but I don't have a super strong opinion here.
It seems like another case where going to the gatekeeper comparison chart might be enlightening, if indeed that spreadsheet has information on what the resolution of timestamps in existing messaging services is.
I doubt it has.
It does not
was
have
literally about features.
Like that's information that you would need to discover by pretty serious inspection and like running some tests. That would be hard to write and hard to execute.
Well, no, all you need to see is an actual timestamp, in another protocol, and then you see what resolution it has. Just need to intercept a message.
But what you don't know is what happens if you have two messages with the same timestamp on those.
Yeah, but we don't care about that. I mean, we don't care if other protocols or other systems have a problem in that regard. We care whether or not we have a problem.
Okay, so let me see if I can paraphrase you. If everybody else has a problem and we have a problem, then we can ignore it. But if our resolution is less than everybody else's resolution and we have a rare problem more often than they do, then that's a problem for us.
I definitely agree with the latter, probably also with the former. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it seems to me like nobody who's with us today has either a strong enough opinion or enough like domain knowledge to say for sure what we should do. So I think the next step here is to go to the list and see and try to flush out like strong opinions or informed opinions about this.
Okay.
All right. Time tags. For CBOR nested part, use CBOR embedding or a CBOR sequence.
Yeah, I still need to figure out how to actually do this. So I would just let's just leave this as
Okay, so you still need to like try it either way, see which one feels more
Yeah.
natural or looks better. Okay.
but I will
Support-
assign this to me.
Fair enough. I mean, I really like having stuff assigned to people, but I feel like you're the de facto assignee for everything in this repository, so I wasn't sure if it was worthwhile.
I mean, if it is explicitly assigned to me, then there's no doubt, right? So
fair enough. Okay, support relative expiration times.
So right
yeah, so in
now,
fact, go ahead.
right now, when you send a self-deleting message, the self-deleting message expires a certain period of time after it's received by each client. That's not what the document says right now. The document has an absolute time. And while an absolute time expiration could be potentially interesting, that the idea here would be for us to support both. And it was just a placeholder for me to not forget this. So that this is just more work for me to do.
Are you proposing to have both in the end, or?
I'm proposing to have both in the next version, and if people want to get rid of the absolute time, they can. But
No.
I mean, it doesn't. I don't think the absolute time expiration is harmful. So
Agreed. That sounds reasonable. Yeah.
I think we have in the
So were you still saying something about expiration times, Rowan?
no. Sorry, I realized you were okay. Now you're back. Now you're on number 23.
Yep. Additional guidance on GitHub flavored markdown.
Yeah, so we had some discussion on the list here. So there was some useful. There was some. These are some points that came from the mailing list. And so I think all of these are pretty straightforward to write up. So these just need to be added. So.
Interesting. Okay. Allow users other than the sender to edit or delete messages. Is this a content issue?
So the content document currently says whether you're allowed, it has rules for the security considerations, has very explicit rules for what you have to reject. And, so in this case, this would be based on having some role-based capability that says you can or can't do this. rather than have this be the, so I would change the document to say that this would be, based on an appropriate policy allowing this, that this would only be allowed if an appropriate policy said that an administrator or moderator or whatever, like that the person other than the sender was allowed to do this.
Maybe it might also be reasonable to give some guidance as to what kind of visibility there should be for the user. For example, if I write a message and you edit it, should users know who edited it? But that is only to add what Ron said. I think it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
As a balanced approach.
Yeah. And this one is similar. This is the same kind of thing where somebody, for example, a moderator would be able to say, everybody's talking, your 3 flows or 3 or 4 messages into something, and suddenly somebody realizes they want to create a topic, and so they create a topic. But these older messages really belong in that topic, and so somebody edits the document or edits those messages to apply a topic ID to them so that they are classified with a particular topic. There was also a mention of the idea that maybe instead of topics that we want an array of topics, so that this is more like labels or tags that can be added and removed. Timo gave the example of, you're talking about game ideas, and someone says, "What about dragons?" And then all the dragon related things get moved into a dragon's topic, right?
Okay, makes sense. Seems like there's some protocol text to be written here. The one thing I wonder, so this and the previous issue both have a policy implications, right? In that the client has to evaluate whether either the deletion or the topic change. Actually, sorry, let me take a step back. The previous issue that we looked at was about privileged users either editing or deleting existing messages. Like, is assigning or changing a topic not just a special case of editing a message?
Yes.
Okay.
But editing just the topic, we could define different policy knobs for editing the contents of the message, so that what the person is attributed to, what the person is saying is different versus what versus what topic it's in. That those could be different. You could have, maybe a super admin is allowed to edit the content of somebody's message to remove, bad words, or is allowed to delete it. But an ordinary moderator is allowed to move things into a different topic stream.
Sure. Right. Yeah. I can see different policies applying, but I guess if you think it's useful, 2 different issues about this, then that's fine. There's something else I was thinking about here, which is, right. So besides text in the content document, telling clients like how to handle these things, does there have to be something corresponding in, say, the room policy document describing the relevant ACLs?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's just like extra paperwork to file corresponding issues on the room policy, or if these issues suffice to keep track of that work.
I can put a label on the ones here that have policy implications, and then I can search when I'm editing room policy to make sure that those don't get lost.
Great. All right. Is more guidance needed on the message delivery statuses?
Yeah, I think that there were some like, expired or deleted or whatever, and so there was no context provided about when it would be appropriate to reveal that information. And if somebody wants to send text, I would be delighted.
So it sounds like that's ready for PR.
So question, I mean, how did they end up in the document in the first place? If you didn't put them there, Ron, or
I put them there, but the issue is that they're not always relevant to deliver in every case, right? So even if, like you may have privacy reasons not to deliver, or to deliver to a different set of recipients, a delivery a status, delivery status notification to somebody about an expired message or versus a delivered message versus a deleted message.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, and I think it would be good to have some guidance there. That these are entirely optional, and that they largely depend on what the application actually wants to do with them. And it could well be the case that you want to send a delivery receipt or a read receipt over a different channel than the original message. But that might still be okay. We had a discussion about that earlier, so it's quite present on my mind right now. But
yeah,
there were some things that are not entirely clear, like what is expired, for example. Like what does that even mean? So I think we need some guidance as to what these different values actually mean and could convey.
Yeah. So expired would be, for example, a self-deleting message. So an example of where you might use this for a self-deleting message was you might send to your other clients that a message was expired. And then it can be rendered in the other clients as you already read it. You already read it and then it expired. So then it's gone from that UI.
Yeah, excellent. Makes sense. That's what we need in the document.
Yeah. All right. All right. I need to put the policy. I'm going to put these policy knobs in here before I forget. It's 25. Sorry, folks. Okay, this next one I think is kind of interesting. So, per our discussion on timestamps, last seen is it's a lot of work to implement, and it doesn't guarantee a perfect, and it has, like, clients can manipulate it. So last seen provides a bound for the sender cannot. Yeah, so in this, I gave these four cases of an honest sender, an honest hub, an honest sender, malicious hub, and so honest sender, malicious hub, and malicious sender, honest hub cases, this is where things get interesting, and it's not particularly clear to me whether last seen is providing enough value here to justify its complexity. So I think this one is a good journalist. Sorry, go ahead, Raphael.
Can I just interject with a quick question? Can you explain what exactly last seen is? Is that a presence feature? Like, what does it mean exactly?
So last seen is basically a partial directed acyclic graph of messages that were allegedly seen by the sender already in that room. So if a message was received and you say it and you put it in your last seen, then you can't unsay that you saw it. And so therefore, if you later, you can't claim later, like, no, this message came before that other message. So it sort of establishes a no earlier than bound to your own messages.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also send a message. A malicious client could also take this and like say, oh, I just saw this message as my last message, which was a message that was a long ago, right? So it could be used to sort of artificially try to manipulate the order. And so we have this awkward thing where an implementation has these two different, a server asserted, a hub asserted, and a sender asserted sort of hint of ordering. And given all the possible ways in which these things could be manipulated, it has to decide, right? If we remove if we remove it, then the server is fully capable of just saying, I sent this before this other, this is the timestamp that I received it, and it's earlier than another message that it actually received it, but it can still do that.
I'm still not on board with what we're trying to prevent. Like, it sounds like it's something that addresses a particular threat model of malicious group members who want to pretend that they saw things in a different order. But so if we take the case of an honest sender and an honest hub, what's the functionality of that thing? Is it okay?
So the last seen was added because the perception of a hub only message ordering allowed the hub to generate specific attacks. However, last seen is only a partial mitigation for that.
How does that relate to MLS with the app-ACK extension?
It's not at all considered here.
Because it sounds like there is a lot of overlap. So first of all, the hub cannot arbitrarily reshuffle all of the messages, because then MLS is going to break, right? Like, commits have to be in order. So the only thing you can do is reshuffle messages between commits.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it wouldn't actually need to reshuffle the messages. It could just manipulate the hub accepted timestamp.
Well, but that is what reshuffling means, right?
Well, no. I mean, rather than, so the hub could send them out in the order received, but just change the apparent order in which they were received. Okay, and then the follower server would take them and forward them on, and then the hub could blame the follower server for reordering them or for sending them in the wrong order.
Sure. Okay, I agree with that, but to me it sounds like we're trying to fix a property of the transport protocol at the content layer. And that's never a good thing to do. So if we want better guarantees of whether or not messages are in order or have been dropped, maybe we should do that a layer below. In other case, this sounds like a complicated threat model that is not entirely, fleshed out, for me at least, or not something that has been done elsewhere and is a very common concept. In the sense that, I don't know, delivery receipts is a very well understood and common concept.
Okay, I'm just making a note here. Okay, Raphael Roberts says that message ordering or drop messages by the hub, or actually I meant reordering, message reordering or drop messages by the hub might be better signaled / prevented at the MLS layer, example using APAC. Okay. That certainly would make me less likely to want to have, even less likely to have last seen around. Come on, there's got to be somebody else here who has something they want to say about this. Pete, you were actually one of the people in the room when we added last seen. I don't remember if you, I don't know if you recall that, but it allowed the clients to be able to say, these are messages that I've received, to prevent them from being to prevent it from being sort of unseen later. Oh, he's gone.
It has last been seen seconds ago.
Yeah. Maybe he was having client trouble. Yeah, that would be a good person to be involved in that discussion, as somebody who was originally involved in the suggestion.
One note here, I think, Rahul, because you said this is not something that's commonly seen or done. I think to a certain degree that's because we're kind of entering new territory, right? In terms of that, we have a federated group messaging thing with very high, degree of integrity and agreement in the group. And so I think there's, sure, like delivery receipts are kind of the next best thing, but if we want something better, I think we just have to come up with it ourselves.
Yeah, and that is totally fine. But what I meant to say with that is that since it doesn't exist elsewhere, we need to be super crisp in our definition of what it is, how it works, like what problem it addresses, etc. That's what I meant. Whereas when and I picked a random example here, but when we talk about delivery receipts, there's already some common understanding of how that could work, because we know that concept from different products that use that, actually. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, fair point. And this goes also in a similar direction. We could talk about APAC, but even APAC is not talking about, it's only talk about sequence numbers, but not about content of messages, for example. So we could
Right.
beef that up even more if we want to do, but that's kind of outside of the scope of this problem, I think.
So I guess, in conclusion, what I'm saying here is that the problem statement is not clear enough. And we already talked about a solution to a problem that's not clear. So let's get the problem statement right first, and then we can see at what layer we should address that.
Okay. I also put in a pointer to the Mimi threat model issue on the Mimi protocol.
Good point.
Yeah, so besides the threat model, is there something we need to be investigating here? Is there say a question to put to the Mimi list, or some investigation to be done across like existing messaging providers so that we can figure out what Mimi should do.
I don't think that this is something that is a problem that exists with other message providers, because the service trusts their infrastructure, and it's not federated, and then clients can decide if they trust it or not, right? We're sort of unique in that we both distrust our hub sort of, and distrust our clients sort of, right?
I mean, what we could do is bring this to the MLS working group, since we're already talking about AppAC. So this might be interesting for MLS users in general, rather than just Mimi users.
I think we would need to have a clear statement of the problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, agreed.
So if you want to take a stab at that, Conrad, I would be delighted. If you want to bow out because you already have so many other things on your plate, I would understand.
Yeah, it would be unlikely to come in this year. It would be something that would be happening in next year. If that's a timescale you can work with, then I'm happy.
You mean in 2024, or you mean in 1 year's time?
No, not in 2024, but certainly in 1 year's time. So
all right,
that's
well,
that's
we can just let it ride.
Scale
then.
I'm giving you between now and in a year. No, I can take up that thing. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So and then maybe we take the rest of the list.
Okay. All right. More timestamps, apparently. Sender timestamp in delivery reports.
Yeah, actually, yeah, this is weird as well, because right now when the sender sends a delivery report, they say this is when I sent it, which could be totally wrong, right? But there would be because of the change that we made, there would now be again a hub accepted timestamp associated with a delivery report, which again suffers from some of the same problems that we discussed, where if you don't trust your hub and you think your hub is going to reorder your messages, then they could potentially say that the delivery report arrived much later than it actually did, right? So I think this is same set of gnarly issues.
So, sorry, is this something we would do if we took action on issue 27? Like, the bean counter in me just doesn't want to have two open issues around. I wonder if this could just be, could just like add this as a comment to number 27 and make sure to keep it in mind as we choose the path of a course of action for that other issue. But on the other hand, I don't know, there's no harm in having.
I would keep it two separate things, because the other one has a concrete action of removing last seen, whereas this one has a concrete action of removing delivery reports, or removing the timestamp from delivery reports, or putting something else in its place.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Right. Rationale and problems for additional hash in reply to.
Yeah. So the main thing here is that we want to be able to support hash agility, but as soon as we do this, then it means that even if we reinit an MLS group, or we get a message via some kind of history mechanism to a client that never received it, in both of those cases, the set of hash, the hash algorithm that the group is currently using could be newer or different than the one in which the in reply to was set. And then we also have this issue that we have basically two hashes. We have a message ID and we have a hash over the content. So that the hash, the message ID, at least is a fixed size, but it's a hash using the ciphertext algorithm. That actually, maybe we should discuss 34 first, because this is related to 34. So right now, when you have Conrad, go ahead.
Sorry, I think I missed this development maybe, but are we using the hash of the plain text in the reply to now?
In reply to has two hashes basically.
Mm-hmm.
It has it has a message ID. The message ID is whatever the message ID was of the original message. The message ID's construction is the hash of the ciphertext of that message.
Yep.
It also has a hash of the content that was sent in the message. The idea being that so this is also sort of related to this concept of if I have history, I want to be able, if I have a message that I received in history and then I later want to be able to verify that that this is the message that I actually received. So for example, let's say I have Alice and Bob. Bob joins a group and gets a set of history, and it has a message that Alice allegedly sent. Bob sets the hash of the content there. And so everyone who's currently in the group can verify that the message that Bob is replying to is associated with the same message that Alice actually sent.
So the problem is that people who receive the message but never seen the ciphertext cannot know, like, if that's a scenario, then someone who's supplying the plain text and maybe the hash of the ciphertext attached, they could just manipulate the message and make it seem like you're replying to something that you're not actually replying to. Is that the threat model here?
No, it's the threat model is that you reply to that the replier manipulates the apparent content of what they're replying to.
Sorry, how?
Or that they're replying to a message that was not actually sent because they had no way of verifying the message ID.
But people generally know the message ID, right? You receive the ciphertext,
Well,
they hash
so
it.
this is why I wanted to talk about 34 first.
Okay. I just want to say here that we can talk about 34 in a second, but I'm just saying we shouldn't put the hash of the plain text in the reply to, because that just destroys forward secrecy potentially. Someone writes a message, someone else joins the group who hasn't seen the message, then someone else replies to that message, and then then the new member can see the hash of the message, and depending on the message length, you can figure out what the message was by just doing a dictionary attack. And
I think the proposal was the hash of the ciphertext, not the plain text.
No. The content hash in reply to is a hash of the plain text. The message is based on a hash of the ciphertext.
Okay. That being said, let's go to 34. Maybe that helps.
Okay. So in the case where in many messaging systems, let's say that I have a phone and I get a new phone. I want to be able to take the history, back it up, and then load it onto my new phone.
Yep.
When I do that, my new phone was never a party to the ciphertext. So I could bring that bring that along adjacent to my history and say this, my history says, well, the message ID was allegedly this, but then the client doesn't necessarily know that was a history. And then same thing in even a more serious issue is if I have a history that is coming from a group like where you want to have sort of Slack-like or Teams-like or WhatsApp-like behavior where I join and I can see history from before I joined. Now, I mean, we can debate the we can debate whether that's a wise idea or not, but plenty of people want to do that, and they can have even that they can have that as a as an option depending on what level of secrecy they want in their groups. And certainly for large groups, that's not really that's not that unexpected, right?
Can I make a proposal that I think would make my security worries go away, and I think would work with your fulfill your functional requirement? And that would be with each message you send some sort of nonce, like a random short, long enough random string, and then you hash that together with a message, and then that gives you the hash that you need for the reply to. So you need to keep the nonce with a message. So yes, you need to store something, and if you have a scrollback backup kind of system, then with each message you need to also provide this salt. It's salt really. But the fact that we have this salt means that if you don't get provided the message and you get a reply to, you cannot actually reconstruct the original content because you would have to brute force the salt, and the salt has sufficient entropy to prevent that.
We also have we basically have something like this already, which is the franking context. Right.
There you go.
Or sorry, the client franking key, I guess, client franking secret, I think it's called, but it's a value which the client generates, which is per message unique and is shared inside of the encrypted content.
And has high enough entropy. Okay, sure, that works for me.
But isn't what you propose, Conrad, equivalent to keeping a hash of the ciphertext around?
Not quite, because if you now if I get the plain text and a hash of the ciphertext, I have no idea I have no way of verifying that the plain text is actually the result of decrypting the ciphertext. And so now when I get a reply to with the ciphertext, I can say with the hash of the ciphertext, okay, I can say, okay, well, this matches the hash of the ciphertext that I get with the message, but someone could have just replaced the whole message and put a completely other message there. Whereas if I have a salt, and in the reply to there's a hash of the message and the salt, I can actually take the salt and the message, hash it, and actually verify that, yes, this is actually replying to this exact message.
Sure. That is true, but that brings us to an entirely different question. So we are talking about backup systems, like either scroll back in a group or synchronizing history between devices of the same user.
Potential backup system, which is very undefined right now. But yeah.
Right, sure, but that's the scope of our discussion, right? It is a backup system, an abstract backup system. So, and the concern here is that the history could be manipulated. And why is that the case? It's the case because we threw away the signatures in the first place. So we talk about a very precise kind of manipulation that we are trying to. Sorry?
It's not that we threw away the signatures. somebody else can't calculate the signatures because the signatures are based on the group context. So they wouldn't be able to validate the signatures even if they were present.
Well, you could.
You could
I
keep
think
around
you
the
can.
hash of the group context.
Yeah, you can keep around enough information to still verify the signatures if that's what you want.
It's calculated. The signature is calculated on the group context, not on the hash of the group context. MLS
Okay.
bug.
Good point. Yeah. So you'd have to keep the whole context there. Good point.
For MLS 2.0, we can fix that.
But yeah, but even then, you'd want not just the signature, but also you need some sort of concrete link between what's in the reply to and the actual content of the message, right? Otherwise, I can make the reply to point to a completely different message that has a valid signature, but is a different message.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have the signature, then the reply to could probably contain the signature, which you can't forge, and which you can also verify. That might be a valid thing, but we don't have that, so that's a bit theoretical. So I think what you're suggesting is kind of keeping the ciphertext around it and the signatures, and then back up the keys. Is that what you're getting at?
Are you talking to me or to Ron?
Yeah, to you. Sorry.
Well, I mean, Ron has a very good point. We can, like, keeping around the signatures makes no sense because in practical terms, we cannot keep around the group context. It's the whole tree. Like, we'd have to keep the whole tree of the group
at every epoch.
Every epoch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like on paper, it's doable. In practice, nobody would want to do that, which actually makes it quite deniable because it's sort of like the signatures are quite meaningless without
accidentally
that.
Deniable.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're getting a bit too deep here.
But so no, I mean this is a good point. Like in practice, signatures are not going to matter in that sense. So what guarantees are we actually expecting? If signatures don't matter, we can rewrite the whole history from scratch anyway.
Well, you can, but you're receiving a reply to, and the person sending the reply to can actually, with cryptographic guarantee, point to the message, to the content. Like you can verify that the reply to is actually in reply to a very specific content. So it's
if you have it, whether you got it from history or whether you got it from ciphertext.
Yeah. So it's not perfect. You still have the problem that you don't trust the history, which is a big one. But at least with the context of the reply to, you get some guarantees.
Agreed. But it feels like, you know, a drop on a hot stone, really.
I mean,
given the fact that the history is completely unauthenticated.
We can talk about an MLS extension that actually allows you to keep around the signature and verify the actual content of the message in addition to everything else. But that's an MLS extension, and I think we can do it. Just have to do it, but it's not inside of Mimi, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, certainly it was considered undesirable. Like, so if we used in reply to and we use the message ID, and then we also use, you know, it's like it would certainly be cleaner and easier for implementations if they only needed to have one fairly large binary string pointing to the original message, and that needs to have the correct security properties. So.
Right.
I can write up a response with a proposal for a mechanism. Would that help? Just writing it down what I said essentially, or
sure.
A PR, or what are you looking for here?
I would say just, you know, like the bar napkin style write up in the issue would be fine.
I think also describing the attacks that we're concerned about. This sounds like another case where not having that threat model spelled out is complicating the discussion.
Yeah.
Good point. But just one more question here. So the proposer here only makes sense in the context where we wouldn't have that MLS extension. The proposal would not make sense if we had signatures around. Is that correct?
Not quite. I mean, if you had signatures around and I have a reply to that has only the, yeah, I mean, what would be in the reply to if you have signatures around?
Well, the hash of the ciphertext.
But you don't have the ciphertext around, so
okay.
you still don't have a link between the hash of the ciphertext and the actual content of the message. So you'd
Yeah.
want something that links that. If you have signatures around, you can probably point to the signature or something like that. But I'd have to think about that. But you'd still want, like, what we're missing is a link between the reply to and the original message you're replying to.
Fair enough. Okay, I just wanted to double check whether, because if it was the case that it's completely obsolete once signatures are around, then I would say we should punt on it until we figured out whether or not we want to have an MLS extension.
Yeah, I'd say it's not completely independent, but I'd say we need something anyway. And I'd have to look at the franking tag, but Rowan said there is already a value, like the kind of value that I'd need for this thing. And if it's already there, we might as well, put something in there in case we end up not making this extension for MLS.
But the franking tag is not automatically there in MLS content, in Mimi content, sorry. It's an optional extension, that you cannot reference from that document as something that's there. So
okay, then we need something extra, or
like
we have to look if there's something else that works.
I mean, maybe the franking could reuse that value. That way you don't end up having two of them. But it would have to be in that direction.
I mean, or the other way around. I mean, we have a value in franking. We can use that value from franking in this. Right?
No, that's what I mean. This is not a good assumption, because franking is optional. Mimi content is not. Like, franking only works if you use Mimi content. That's the dependency here.
I mean,
but not the other way around.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we said from the beginning that franking is only for operators that want to have it. It's not mandatory to implement.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is the path forward here is Conrad's going to take a stab at writing up something that addresses these problems, as well as writing up like what are the problems that we want to solve, or maybe more concretely the attacks we want to mitigate.
Yeah, I'll try it, and Rowan can see if that matches the original threat, well, like the original idea.
All right. Let's see. All right, hopefully on to something a little more boring. Whoa. Reference via RFC 2392 URI and disposition inline.
Yeah, so this is for all of the hardcore apps people who have had issues with like inline HTML that references inline documents. Like I think all Marvin is asking for here is more text concretely describing what needs to happen. I think I know exactly what we need to write here.
Sounds like a simple matter of typing. Yes.
I think it is. I can come up with a proposal with a PR, and Marvin can review it.
Okay, sounds good. All right, getting rid of part index.
Yeah. So I don't think that So while I think we could get rid of explicitly listing the part index, I don't think that we could. I don't think that we could get the property that Marvin desires, where where you have to go back and modify your HTML after you've created your structure. If you want to do inline content as in the previous PR or the previous issue. So if you basically you do need a way, if you want to have inline content where and I think he's wrong that you would end up rendering something twice, right? So you would just implement things in such a way where you have let's say HTML, or you could even have Markdown that references these other things, and you have basically a content ID URI that says this is related to part index number whatever. You need to calculate what those part indexes are before you stick them in the HTML, and that's fine. And the classic way to do that would be to actually do the HTML as the last part. So you would go and you would generate your whole structure, and then the last part that you would generate would be the HTML, and you would hand that to your Mimi content thing, and then you would be done, and you would encrypt your message and send it. So I think that there is a good way around this. I don't think it can be made. One part of this I think we can do, and one part we can't. So, and then the question is for the working group whether we want it to be explicitly listed in the document or not. It certainly is way easier in the examples if it's explicit, because then everybody can tell which part index it is that we're talking about at any given point. But that can be solved by, writing some examples and then annotating the examples to say, hey, by the way, this is part index 0, 1, 2, 7, whatever.
Okay, so then do you want to take this back to Marvin with some clarifying questions, or do you want to take this to the working group to ask?
I think I want to try and get some text for 30, and then I can go to the mailing list once 30 is done and say, okay, here's the stuff that would be required. I can also include the text that would be required to make 31 inline, to make inline work in this case of 31, whether or not part index was optional to send. And then I could describe my solution on the mailing list for 31. So
okay.
I'm going to write down something on this. That's actually a solution to 30 more than anything else. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, makes sense. So you want to address 30 and then revisit this in light of
I'm making a note
what gets added in that change. All right.
Okay.
Move franking assertion from Mimi protocol into Mimi content.
Remember this one, guys? So we already talked about the Mimi protocol issue, the corresponding Mimi protocol issue. So this is just the other side of that.
Yep. Okay.
But I should probably put a link in here to the
protocol issue.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you happen to have the number for that one?
I don't, but I can get it for you. 91.
Okay. All right, updated.
Thanks. Okay, then last item for today, create IANA registry for Mimi content extension map keys.
Yeah. All right, let me provide a link to, okay. I apologize that this is raw, but after many discussions back and forth with the authors of AppSync, and largely also mainly between me and Richard Barnes, Richard wrote a new version of AppSync, which is basically talks about this concept of an application API, but it's very similar to what AppSync did before, but it has this, the new term instead of application ID is component ID. So the idea is that you have anything that is application state that you want to store in MLS gets stored in a group context extension called application data. It could be either the actual state, or it could be a hash of that state. It could be whatever representation you want it to be. And then you have a separate proposal type that is an update proposal. That update, it's like application data update or something like that. And in there, the application can, each component can define what the update format is. And the update format can just be completely replace the component container with a new state, and hand that to the application data, and replace that component ID with the new state. It could be that it's something like participant list, where the update is add Bob, remove Alice, in which case there's like some kind of a patch operation, which is defined by the component. And it takes that and then either updates the whole list and shoves that into the application data, or it could be something where you make some kind of a patch or change, and you generate a hash, and then the hash is the thing that's stored in the application data. So all those things are possible, and it's up to the application, in this case, Mimi, us, to decide how we want to do this. But these component IDs are on a per application basis. So the idea here would be that we would have for Mimi, we would say, these are components that Mimi uses, and everybody using Mimi needs to use these components with the same component IDs. So we would make like a registry that has, say, like a URN that's, URN : IETF : Mimi : participant list. And then we would assign that component ID 2 for Mimi. And anybody that wants to get a component ID for Mimi, they would go and define this. We might have a large private use section, but then like these numbers would just get used. And then we would always know, like, a participant list in Mimi is always item number, component ID number 2. So that's the idea. So watch this space.
Yep, sounds pretty clear to me. Okay, that's all of the open issues across our adopted document repositories. Go ahead, Rafael.
Yeah, just a quick one. So Timo, who was in the chat here earlier, started implementing it. It's pretty far along, so expect an implementation soon.
started implementing this AppSync, this new version of AppSync or participant
No,
list?
content, Mimi content.
Mimi content. Oh, excellent. Good.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
would be nice to interrupt with someone.
Yeah, so Marvin has an implementation, and I think that I have an implementation here that should be usable shortly.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah, it's great to hear.
So also expect some more feedback from that. We went over a number of questions today, and there's probably going to be more, but just generally minor stuff.
Okay, yeah, please create these issues.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
So we look forward to that. Otherwise, I think we have a few different items, pretty much all on Rowan's plate, to take questions to the Mimi list, to to establish consensus or just like broad indifference to a few of the things we discussed today. Otherwise, yeah, we have the next interim, which is scheduled probably for 2 weeks from now. I'm always hesitant to say it out loud because I'll get it wrong, but it'll be on the 18th. At this time, in your respective time zones, please check the working group page for accurate schedule information and joining info. Okay, anybody have anything else before we adjourn for today?
I'd just like to apologize for the fact that this interim has been particularly boring because it's been mostly me talking. But hopefully there will be some more PRs instead of issues for you guys to look at next time. So.
Yeah, and if anybody is interested in having less boring interims, please suggest agenda items to us. Contact us at mimi-chairs@ietf.org if you want to reserve some time in the next meeting. All right, I'll see you all on the list or in a couple of weeks. So long, folks.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Ron. See you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.